Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Usmatmanam Saparitāja Vacāja Satarasatmāna Bhagi Ananta Kodi Vaishnava Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, and welcome to all the devotees online. Thank you very much for your attendance and association as we go through Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, verses 1 to 11, the passing away of Bhishmadev. Very beautiful chapter. We are now going to be associating with Bhishmadev. We just spent our time associating with Kunti Devi and the glorious prayers. And now we're going to be hearing of the glories and wonderful qualities and instructions from Bhishmadev. Om Jnanatimi-vandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantika. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapara Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sarva Sastra Vyusha Sarva Vedeka Satpala Sarva Stantaratnadya Sarva Lokai Triprada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavato Prabhu Kaligando Didaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churn from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures, O most proud transfer fruit of all the Vedas, O you are enriched with the jewels of all spiritual philosophical conclusions, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people, O you who grant spiritual vision to all the people of the world, O light breath of the Vaishnava devotees, O Lord, you are the sun which has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. You are actually Lord Krishna who has returned amongst us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshasharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. By reading you one attains transcendental bliss. For your silvers rain pure love of God upon the Veda. You are always to be served by everyone, for you are incarnation of Lord Krishna. Madekabando Mad Sangim Mad Guru Man Mahadana Manishtaraka Mad Bhagya Madananda Namastute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, O my companion, O my teacher, O my great wealth, O my deliverer, O my good fortune, O my bliss, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you. Asadu Sadu Tadahi Natinu Chochatara Kahanamun Chakada Chinmam Premna Ritkatayos Pura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O give us saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplift to the very fallen. Please do not ever leave me. Please become manifest Mahatma through the company pure love of Krishna. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yatonvayaritarata Charte Swavignaswara Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsuraya Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatrati Sargom Risha Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, O pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primal cause of all causes of creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations and is independent because there is no other cause beyond. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original loving being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion as one is bewildered by illusory representation of water seen in fire, land seen on water. Only because of him, to the material universe is temporarily manifest by the reactions of the three modes of nature appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existing in transcendental abode, which is forever free from illusory representation of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Prayano Paisha Sabya Kalavas Minyuge Jana Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagyo Padrata. All under one is iron age of Kali, many but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. Narayam namaskrityam narachevam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisance to the personality of God Narayana, to Narendra and Vishnu, the supremest human being, and the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Savai pum sabaro dharmo yata bhaktira dokshaja hoituke pratyata yayatma suprasiddhati. Supreme occupation, dharma for all humanity is that by which man can attain loving devotional service under the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted, completely by the self. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Vairagyam Yanam Hetukam. By rendering devotional service under the personality of God as Shri Krishna, one immediately acquires causes knowledge and detachment from the world. Vadanti tattvavidas tattam yat jnanam advayam ramyati paramatmeti bhagavaniti sabhyate. Learned transcendentals who know the absolute truth calls non-dual substance Bhagavan Paramatma Brahman Paramatma Bhagavan. Shru Shru Shrosadananasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahatsavaya Viprapunyatirta Nishevanat. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shranvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Yaratam Kirtantastoya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the true devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtues when properly heard and chanted. Nastapaya Bhadreshu Nitam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavata Uttam Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtiki. By regular attendance in the class in the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are continuing Srimad Bhagavatam based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the Foundacharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So let us cover some feedback from the devotees from last week's session, Canto 1, Chapter 8, verses 44 and 52. Please share with us what you remembered, what caught your attention, what you noted down in your notebook, so that it can go deeper into your consciousness and stay there. And for us to even recap the following week. So Nalini Kanta says, Krishna never fails. And because Krishna never fails, one of his names is Achyuta, infallible. The living entities are all fallible. Only Krishna is infallible. And therefore, if we depend on ourselves, depend on everybody else, it is rest assured we will experience some form of failure. If we surrender and depend on Krishna, we will never fail, even though it apparently may seem like that I'm failing this life. Something didn't, Krishna didn't help me. But that is our limited perspective. Just like wherever the sun is, there is no question of darkness. Similarly, wherever Krishna is, there is no question of inauspiciousness. So Krishna never fails. Shamananda Prabhu says, Hare Krishna. Thank you for sharing Srimad Bhagavatam nectar with all of us. Nice reminder for us to always try to see the bigger picture. Krishna is always showing us, even in our own lives, that he is perfect and all-knowing. And we may not understand how and why things are happening the way they are at a point in time, but ultimately he's in control of everything. Yes. And when things happen that we do not understand, we have to understand that it is our limitation and not Krishna's. And what we need to do is try to probe is try to probe, what is Krishna trying to teach me? What is Krishna revealing? What lesson does Krishna want me to learn from this? In this way, I can take every situation in a way that is Krishna conscious, that is favorable to serving Krishna, even if I cannot comprehend why things happen. And we also covered, we heard how Yudhishthira Maharaj, he was placed in a situation apparently acting like a materialistic man, and yet he was a pure devotee of the Lord. Now somebody may look at that, some of his servants may think, this is not a person I served. This is not a person I decide to take shelter of. Why is he acting like this, like a materialistic man? And they don't see that this is Krishna's arrangement. So we always have to keep an open mind and understand, as you said, Krishna is always in control. He never ever loses control, or he never ever makes a mistake. Oops, sorry, I gave the wrong karma to you. Supposed to be, nope, Krishna never makes that mistake. So that is very, very important. And when one has that understanding, it relieves the heart of great anxiety. Just like people in this world are so caught up with COVID, there's that, why it's trifling. If Krishna is sanctioning it, we accept it and we live through it. We grow through it. Every opportunity is there for us to become stronger. And if one uses every opportunity to become stronger, no matter how difficult or how dangerous or how inconvenient the situation is, then that becomes the greatest opportunity for growth. And one glorifies, one is grateful. Thanks for this situation that I could actually grow. Vasaraj Prabhu says, Krishna can be conquered by loving devotional service unto him. You can't buy him. You can't bribe him. You can't avoid him. Madridas says, maybe you can bribe him with some butter. Butter, but if you give him butter, he's not interested. If you give him butter with love, he's interested. So yes, he's still bought by loving devotional service. Mother Archana Siddhi says, Krishna allows the spiritual master to see faults to uplift his disciples. Yes. We should have blinkers. As followers, as practitioners, we should have blinkers, just like a horse has blinkers, so that the horse has blinkers so it doesn't get distracted. It only sees the road, doesn't see anything else, doesn't see objects, doesn't see distractions. Otherwise, the horse can be very distracted. So they put blinkers on the horse, so the horse just sees the ground and he's steered by the horse rider, and in this way, he just moves. The horse just moves. So we have to have blinkers to keep on the path of the process of bhakti, not to be distracted, because there's inconceivably unlimited amounts of distractions in this world, coming from every facet of creation, from life, from people we interact with, objects, so many distractions. We want to keep focus on the goal, on the path. And the spiritual master, he's the only one that has one blinker to keep on the path and the other blinker to find the faults of the disciples to correct them. He's really finding, that's his service. It's really not fault finding. It's service finding. It's molding the disciple to become a better disciple. So it's really his service. Nalini Canto Prabhu says, Hemawat Parika says, our goal is to get the smile of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj desire to please them. Yes. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasada. Yasya prasada nagatopi. That I want to try to render my service in the best possible way, to the best of my ability, so that they may be pleased. And if we can achieve this, then this is perfection of life. Mother Acharya Siddhi says, Krishna can respond a little, but we achieve unlimited. Prabhupada says, you take one step to Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps to you. You give a little to Krishna, Krishna gives you 10 hands. So Krishna can give us more than what we can accommodate and hold. Mother Lash, Lord Chaitanya's message was not in sacrificing animals. Harinam is the sacrifice for this age. Yes. And I also made the point that anyone, even though they may be spiritualists, religionists, transcendentalists, followers of some new age religion, whatever, if they do not accept the glorification of the holy name as the process for this age, they are technically disrespecting the Supreme Lord. They are disrespecting the Yuga Avatar. And as devotees, we should not get caught up in other forms of remedial measures. We also have to be firmly and fully convinced that the holy name, the holy name, the holy name is the only way, the only way, the only way. Every other way will be incomplete and fallible. The holy name is the only complete and infallible way. We have to become convinced. And when we are convinced, then we can experience the potency and the power of the holy name, and we can share that. We can share the holy name with others. Thank you very much for your feedback. Let us proceed with today's verses. So we are now covering the passing away of Bismuth in the presence of Lord Krishna. This is the 9th chapter of the second part of Srimad Bhagavatam, which has 5 different sections or petals. And we're going to be covering verses 1 to 11. Bismuth welcomes everyone assembled at his deathbed according to time, place, and circumstance. Text 1. Suto vacha iti bita praja drohat sarvadharma vivitsaya tato vinasanam pragad yatra devo brito patat. Sutta Goswami said, being afraid for having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There, Bhishmadev was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. So now the scene is now changing from Hastinapur to the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and now we entering this amazing scene where Bhishmadev is pierced. It is described that he was pierced with so many arrows, you could not put a finger in between any of the arrows. There was no space. His whole body was shot with arrows by Arjuna. And we can consider that scene because Bhishmadev was like a insurmountable pillar. He could not be destroyed. He was practically very, very powerful. And every arrow that Arjuna had to shoot, that had to release, must have been so painful for Arjuna. This was his grandfather. And And Bhishmadev and the Pandavas had such a loving bond. Arjuna was like the favorite warrior of Bhishmadev, and he had to shoot every single one of these arrows. He was fighting for Dharma. And even though it was painful, he had to follow his duty. And this is the theme that's going to be throughout this chapter. Following and practicing and applying one's duty according to time, place, and circumstance. Prabhupada in the purport says, in this 9th chapter, as it is willed by Lord Shri Krishna, Bhishmadev will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhishmadev will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world, and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhishmadev was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. This passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them assembled here to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. It's an irony that how is Bhishmadev a great soul when he was fighting against Krishna? He was on the enemy side. And many people misunderstand Bhishmadev. So in order to reveal to the world the glories of Bhishmadev, Lord Krishna's desire was to let him speak on the codes of Dharma to Yudhishthira Maharaj. It is also an amazing scene because Bhishmadev, he was a warrior, Kshatriya, and he made the terrible vow. Bhishma means terrible vow, that he will never marry, especially for a Kshatriya, and he would uphold the throne no matter who rules. So in his life, we learn two important lessons in terms of making vows or keeping promises. One is personal spiritual vows. And we should always make personal spiritual vows. We should be very careful to make organizational material vows or organizational managerial vows. Bhishmadev took both. For his personal vow that I will never marry, he became glorified as Bhishmadev. And he kept that vow. And because of making that vow, his father gave him the boon that I bless you, you will have the ability to leave this body at will when you want to leave. And the second vow that he made, that I will stand by the throne of Hastinapur no matter what, that was a dangerous and inappropriate vow. Because of that, he had to be on the side of the Kauravas. So we should be very careful. We should rather make spiritual, personal vows. And in that way, it is fully dependent on us. If you make like how Bhishmadev made a managerial, organizational vow, that is dangerous because you don't know, like in his case, Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan took up the reins. And he had to be on their side. So we can learn from his life. We'll also, Prabhupada will share when we get to this point, we'll also be speaking about another lesson we can learn from Bhishmadev. But what is more astounding, Srila Prabhupada when Srila Prabhupada was speaking on the 3rd verse in this chapter, and he was speaking about how Bhishmadev is here. He's lying on the bed of arrows. He could leave at any point in time, but he is not leaving. And why is he not leaving? Because he is a Mahajan, and he knows the science of leaving this world without leaving this world in such a way that one will not come back to this world. The art of dying. He knew the science, the art of dying, how to die, how to leave this world so that we never have to die again. And this theme will be there throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. He wanted to see the Supreme Lord Krishna. And therefore, he waited for the opportune moment where Krishna would give him audience. He was praying to the Lord, may I have the opportunity to see you before I leave, because that way, if I leave seeing you, it will be the perfection of my life. Our whole Krishna consciousness practice, our lifetime of Krishna conscious practice, our lifetime of Krishna conscious service is simply so that at the end of our life, we may be able to remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada makes it very clear in one of his Bhaktivedanta purports that while you're on the ground, you can be assisted. But once you take your plane and you fly in the sky, you're on your own. You cannot be helped by anyone. So similarly, throughout our life, we can be assisted, we can be helped and guided. But when we're on our deathbed, then we fly our own plane. And at that time, when we are on the deathbed, we should remember this incident, this episode of Bhishmadev as inspiration of what we should be doing. Now, Bhishmadev was a glorious personality. He was so glorious that he practically attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, the great exalted sages. They all assembled here to show their feelings of love, of respect, and affection for this great soul. This is also very, very exemplary. We all have come in this world to live. But in order to live a successful, purposeful life, we have to learn how to live. And we can learn from sages, from great devotees, from scripture, how to live our life. So just living like trees, animals, this is not living. Bhagavatam will share, a tree breathes, a tree lives for many, many years. So living for many years is not really a glorious life. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, this is not a glorious life. So we have to learn how to live a glorious life. What does it mean to live a glorious life? And then we also have to learn what is the ultimate goal, which is to love the Supreme Personality of God and love everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. And then finally, if we're living, we learn how to live, and learning means constantly growing so that we can perfect our loving relationship with the Lord. We have to leave a legacy. The greatest personalities leave the greatest legacy. Consider Srila Prabhupada, such an amazing legacy he has left for the next 10,000 years. It's inconceivable. It's inconceivable. and not a legacy that will keep people in this material world, a legacy that will take people out and reestablish their relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such an amazing gift, glorious gift. So Srila Prabhupada definitely has left a glorious legacy. So we don't just want to live, use resources and die. We want to live so that we can offer ourselves and leave a legacy for people to appreciate and be grateful for. And Bhishmadev attracted many souls because he has left a glorious legacy. And we're going to be hearing about some of those aspects of the glorious legacy that he has left behind. Prabhupada speaks about a few aspects in relation to this incident that now we are seeing on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Prabhupada says, anyone who takes birth in this land, he is national. So the most important point is that the king he's so responsible. He became afraid that I have killed so many praja. Praja, it is not said here human being. No, praja. If this is definition, praja, one who takes birth. So the animals also take birth. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is not only thinking of human beings who were killed in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He's thinking of all the horses, the elephants, because they are also living entities. They're also praja, national, this word. Just like we have Kruger National Park, right? National. We don't find in the Vedic literatures national. It is modern invention. So if we feel nationally, then we feel for every living entity who is born in that land. That is real Krishna consciousness. So praja doesn't just mean they're interested in human beings. Praja actually means all living entities. Such a glorious, such a wide vision, a broad-minded vision of a leader. Most leaders in Kali Yuga are interested in themselves. If they're a little more broad-minded, they're interested in their family. And if they're a little broad-minded, they may be interested in some of the citizens, their party. Otherwise, no one compares to Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was interested in every living being and living entity. Glorious. That Krishna is greater brahmachari than me. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, now all the Pandavas along with Krishna, they have come to Bhishmadev for taking his last instructions. He was lying on the bed of arrows for death. So his father's benediction was that Bhishmadev would not die unless he desires to die. He was a very avowed brahmachari, truthful. And Bhishmadev recommended in the Rajasuya Yagya that Krishna is greater brahmachari than he. Although I am brahmachari, but Krishna is greater brahmachari. Why? I am brahmachari. I have avoided association of women. But Krishna, he was a young boy and he had so many young girlfriends. Still, he was not sexually agitated. He's the greatest brahmachari. That is the recommendation given by Bhishmadev. When Shishupal was criticizing Krishna, Bhishmadev supported Krishna that what kind of brahmachari I am. He is greater brahmachari than me. I think I could not save myself, keeping myself amongst the young girls. No, but Krishna can do so. He is real brahmachari. So therefore, his another name is Achyuta, never falls down, infallible. So here's another definition of infallible. That person who associates with so many young damsels that he never falls down. Very rare or impossible to find an infallible brahmachari in Kali Yuga. Unless one is totally fixed at the lotus feet of the infallible, then he can become an infallible brahmachari, like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So this is glorious. Text 2. Tadate Bratara sarve sadaswai swanair bhushitai anbagachan ratair vipra vyasa domya tayastata. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyasa and rishis like Domya, the learned priest of the Pandavas, and others. There's no purport, but Prabhupada shares in relation to the Pandavas being adorned very beautifully. All the saddles of horse, in fact, there is a purport. Yeah, the next one is an purport. All the saddles of horses, if they are golden ornamented, Prabhupada. So one very important word is here. Sadai swai swanar bushtitai. Formerly, the horses were used in military division. So all the horses, when they are required for procession or going on to fight, were well decorated with the golden ornaments. Swarna Bhushitai. So just imagine all the saddles of the horses, if they are golden ornamented, how many ounces you will require to decorate the horse. So what is the price of gold now? Danavir, $128 in an ounce, Prabhupada. Just see, at least 50 ounces will be required to decorate one horse. And 1 ounce is $120. So what is the price of 50 ounces? Devotees, $5,000, Prabhupada. And 60,000 horses, how much it comes to? Laughter. Where is that gold? They are very much proud, advancement of material civilization, but instead of gold, we find plastic. Laughter. And the nonsense. They are very much proud of their wealth. It is also Prabhupada in one lecture also says, previously during the reign of Yudhishthira Maharaj Parikshit 5,000 years ago, they would eat on golden plates. And once they finish eating on golden plates, they can discard the golden plates, no problem. Today's world, we eat on plastic plates. So this is not material advancement of civilization. It's actually degradation. The Vedic culture was very, very opulent, both in terms of values internally and in terms of values in terms of wealth. And the kings, they would not do anything without consulting. So this Kshatriya, this Maharaj Yudhishthira, they're also Kshatriyas. So when they were going to see Bhishmadev, they were going there in royal style, with chariot, with horses, and decorated with golden ornaments, and the Brahmanas, Vyasadeva and others. All the Kshatriyas, kings, would be always accompanied by hordes of Brahmanas. As soon as they require any instruction, immediately consult the Brahmanas, and they have good advice. And they gave good advice, do like this. This is the business of the Brahmanas. And the kings, they would not do anything without consulting. Don't think that because there was monarchy, they were all autocrat. No. If the Brahmanas would not agree, then they won't do. The Brahmanas community, all saintly persons, learned scholars, Brahmanas, there was a committee, and the king would take their advice how to manipulate the political affairs or administration, and they would consult standard books. So this was the system. The kings had ministers, and the ministers would advise. According to time, place, and circumstance, they would give guidance. And the king would always follow the ministers. So technically speaking, the brahmanas, the ministers, were ruling the kingdom. The king was simply the person who would action and carry out their instructions. Similarly, in our life also, if we have proper guidance and we always consult to be directed and act according to the codes of Dharma, then we will always be protected and successful. It is mentioned that those who protect Dharma, Dharma protects them. Dharma rakshati rakshata. That anyone who protects Dharma, upholds Dharma, will always be protected by Dharma. And we see that throughout so many personalities' lives, that even though they may be plagued with so many difficulties and challenges, like the Pandavas, but because the Pandavas followed Dharma, then they were always protected and they came out successful at the end. It's not so much the different battles or minor wars that they would be fighting, but it's the ultimate battle that they will be successful in. Text 3. Bhagavanapi vipra se ratena sadananjaya sater vyarochata nripa kuvera ivaguya kai. The sage amongst the Brahmanas, Lord Shri Krishna, personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus, King Yudhishthira appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guyakas. Purport. Lord Shri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhishmadev in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. Kuvera is the richest of all demigods, and herein King Yudhishthira appeared like him, Kuvera, for the procession along with Shri Krishna was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthira. So presentation is very important. Krishna here made sure that the Pandavas were adorned very aristocratically, so that when Bhishmadev would see them, immediately he would get so much joy, because Bhishmadev wanted so much for the Pandavas to rule. Why? Because they were righteous, and he knew that they would be able to please the citizens, rule the world wonderfully, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead's desire. Because the king really is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is meant to carry out the orders, the codes of conduct as stipulated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So therefore, it is very, very important. And for us, in a practical sense, this is also important. Why? Because materialistic people are attracted and repulsed by externals. So therefore, our external presentation has to be very, very wonderful to attract people. And we see Prabhupada, he wanted to present Krishna consciousness in the most attractive way. Every facet of Krishna consciousness, whether it was kirtan, whether it was prasadam, whether it was deity worship, the books, everything, how we would receive guests, how we would, engage in our services, everything. Prabhupada wanted the presentation to be attractive and appealing. Naturally, the content of that presentation also had to be infused with devotion, with the sentiments to please. But the external presentation also was very, very important for Srila Prabhupada. Just like, Prabhupada was he was very attentive to how we would be dressed when we go into the public. No, it's not like we have our, dhoti kurta not ironed, there's holes everywhere, and, we don't have any tilak. In this way, Prabhupada didn't want us to be, we didn't want Krishna God to be presented in this way. We are presenting, we are coming in a lineage of such a glorious culture with so many great personalities, starting from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore we are presenting the culture and the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore our presentation to people should highlight, should reveal that this is the distinction. We're not just another religious organization. We're not just another group. No, we are ambassadors of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We are ambassadors of predecessor acharyas who are connected to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And therefore, in every way, we should try to reveal this identity. We should not be embarrassed, we should not be shy, but we should be bold to present this identity. This is our lineage, this is our product that we are presenting to the world, the sculpture of Krishna consciousness. That is why we see Srila Prabhupada went to the West. He didn't change his external attire. He didn't present himself as an American. I'll present myself as an American, because he went for a group, all the so-called spiritualists. There were many spiritualists in India there were many spiritualists in America from India, and there was an organization that they had. So they invited Srila Prabhupada to come. And he was the only personality that was dressed in Vaishnava attire. Everybody else was like certain shirt and pants. And they told Srila Prabhupada that, Swamiji, if you want to attract the Americans, you have to dress like them. Prabhupada knew that this is not a group for him. This is not the proper association, and he left. Because Prabhupada didn't go there to take. Prabhupada went there to give. So presentation is very important. Here we see Lord Krishna following this very important principle in relation to pleasing Bhishmadev, because he knew that if just by presenting the Pandavas in this way, as soon as Bismuth would see, he would be very, very happy and pleased. He would get so much solace in his heart, because right now on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he has no idea, even though he may have received the message, but at the point of when he was on the battlefield, he was naturally getting the news. But so many things may have transpired that he may not have got news of. So when he saw the Pandavas in this way, he was delighted. Prabhupada says such great personalities darkened because they took money from them. So this is another lesson, a very important lesson that we can learn from Bhishmadev and Dronacharya. Therefore, Arjuna is considering, how can I kill Bhishmadev? But duty is so strong. Krishna is advising, yes, he must be killed because he has gone to the other side. He has forgotten his duty. He should have joined you. Therefore, he is no more in position of guru. You must kill him. He has wrongly joined the other party. Therefore, there is no harm killing him. Similarly, Dronacharya, I know that they are great personalities. They have got great affection, but only on material considerations, they have gone there. What is the material consideration? Bhishma thought that I am maintained by the money of Duryodhan. Duryodhan is maintaining me. Now he is in danger. If I go to the other side, then I should be ungrateful. He has maintained me so long. And if I, in the time of danger, when there is fighting, if I go to the other side, that will be, he thought like this. So he thought like this. He did not think that Duryodhana may be maintaining, but he has usurped the property of the Pandavas. But it is his greatness. He knew that Arjuna will never be killed because Krishna is there. So from a material point of view, I must be grateful to Duryodhana. The same position was for Dronacharya. They were maintained. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that Vishayira ana kaile manila haya mana. Such great personalities became darkened because they took money from them. Ana. If I am provided by somebody who is too much materialistic, then that will affect me. I will become also materialistic. I will also become materialistic. So we can learn from Bhishmadev this statement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Vishayira ana kaile malina haya mana. When you Vishayira ana means grains. Vishayira, if you eat grains from materialistic people, grains cooked by materialistic people, grains cooked by non-devotees, kaila, eat. If you eat grains cooked by materialistic devotees, what happens? Malina. What becomes malina? Malina means impurity, becomes wicked. What becomes wicked? Higher mana, your mind. Your mind becomes impure. Your mind becomes materialistic. Your mind becomes contaminated. Therefore, as devotees, we do not eat grains cooked by materialistic people. Duryodhana and Dronacharya and Bhishmadev, they were eating the grains cooked by Duryodhana. So therefore, because they were eating grains cooked by materialistic people, they were contaminated. And that is why they were not able to understand or follow the proper codes of Dharma and side with Krishna. They were purchased, as Prabhupada says, purchased with gold over grains. So we have to be very careful. So this is a beautiful lesson that we can learn from Bhishmadev. And it is very interesting that Bhishmadev now is lying on the bed of arrows. And as we proceed through the verses, he's going to start instructing by the desire and will of Krishna. He's going to instruct Yudhishthira on Dharma. As soon as he starts to instruct Yudhishthira on Dharma, Draupadi giggles a little. And Dronacharya notices that she giggled a little. Naturally, he's like, he knew that something is in her consciousness. So he asked her, what? Why are you giggling? And she says, it's interesting that you're going to speak about Dharma now, but what happened to Dharma? What happened to you speaking about Dharma when I was being disrobed in the assembly? Then you couldn't speak Dharma? And Bhishmadev responded, yes, you are correct. At that time, because I was eating Kaurava grains, my blood was contaminated and impure, and therefore I could not speak on the codes of Dharma. And now, with my body being pierced with so many arrows, all the blood in my body has been drained, and that impurity has been drained. And now I'm reinstated in my purity, and therefore now I can speak on Dharma. Please forgive me for that time when I was not able to speak on Dharma. So we as devotees have to be very careful. Grains and fire are good conductors of consciousness. So one's consciousness of the cook can be transmitted very, very wonderfully through fire into grains, which we then eat. So therefore, be very careful of the grains that you are consuming. We want to only eat grains cooked, prepared by those who are devotees and following the principles laid by Srila Prabhupada. Text 4. Drishtva nipatitam bhumau divas chuttam ivamaran prane mu pandava bhishmam sannuga sahachakrina. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthira, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved in a humanly custom, and so he also bowed down before the dying Bhishmadev, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthira. So here we see the exemplary humility of the Lord. Even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's not proud. He's not arrogant. He's a personification of humility. And Krishna is perfectly relating in every role as a perfect baby, as a perfect son, as a perfect husband, as a perfect lover, as a perfect friend, as a perfect younger cousin. So in every way, Krishna is perfectly acting his role. And we can imagine how this must have touched Bhishmadev, because Bhishmadev knew Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Lord is bowing down to Bhishmadev. It's a churning of the hearts. Krishna is reciprocating and churning the loving sentiments and devotion of his devotees. Text 5. Tatra brahmarshaya sarve devar sayascha satam rajar sayascha tatrasan drashtum bharata pungavam. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharata, Bhishma, all the great souls in the universe, namely the rishis among the demigods, the brahmanas, the kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. So practically from the whole universe, people came to take darshan of this great personality. Just consider, if somebody dies, somebody will say, oh, thank God, he's gone. But for Bhishmadev, practically so many people in the universe, great souls, rishis, demigods, brahmanas, they all came to pay respects, offer their love and affection for this amazing personality. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. And Prabhupada makes a wonderful statement here. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhishmadev himself was also one of the brahmacharis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharata. All the rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them assembled here on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. And this is such a beautiful picture we see. So many souls all assembled. And they are coming to pay respects to Bhishmadev, and Bhishmadev is still alive. The next question is going to be that they're coming to see him, which implies that they are all his guests. And in this picture, we see there are hundreds and thousands of brahmanas, of rishis, kings, great souls. And Bhishmadev needs to honor every single one of them because they are his guests. How is Bhishmadev going to receive all these guests? Because Bhishmadev is the epitome of Dharma. He was following the codes of Dharma. He knows the etiquettes. So we're going to hear how is he going to fulfill the etiquette of receiving all these guests. Another important point here is rishis or sages, saintly persons, are those situated in the quality of goodness. So we also need to rise ourselves to the mode of goodness. We need to come to the level of goodness, because the lower two modes are not favorable for spiritual practice. We want to rise and come to the mode of goodness. And then ultimately by the practice of Krishna consciousness, we want to rise beyond the mode of goodness. But at least the mode of goodness is a beautiful springboard for spiritual practice. Text 6 and 7. So now we're going to hear of the few of the different personalities that have come to see Bhishmadev. And what's interesting is Srila Prabhupada spends 3 pages, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say about 6 pages, just covering the glories of these personalities. So let us hear who these personalities are, and then we'll hear Srila Prabhupada telling us about them. Parvato Narada Domya Bhagavan Badarayana Brihadaswo Bharat Vaja Shashishyo Renukasuta Vashishta Indra Pramadas Trito Gritsamadhostita Kakshivan Gautamo Trishcha Kaushikata Sudarshana. All the sages like Parvati Muni, Narada, Domya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, Brihad Dashva, Bharadwaja, and Parasuram, and disciples Vashishta, Indra Pramada, Trita, Samada, Ashita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshan were present. So now Prabhupada goes into each one's life and gives a synopsis. It's important that we should know as much of these personalities that Srila Prabhupada wants to share. He could have just said, these are the personalities that were present, and move on. But Prabhupada took time to go through each of these personalities and share with us a little about their qualities and glorification. So it is important that we understand why. By hearing about these great personalities, we develop the qualities that they have. And these are extraordinary personalities. Therefore, we also are inspired by understanding that the Vedic culture was very rich with great exalted personalities. These personalities were following the Vedic culture and thus should inspire us that if these great personalities have accepted the Vedic culture, then we should follow in their glorious footsteps. For example, we find someone may consider following Krishna consciousness to be like following any other philosophy or religious organization, but it is not the same. Following the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not the same as following a man-made variation or permutation or concoction in this world. It is vastly different. But in this world, it's difficult to distinguish because there are so many options. So one way is to look at those who are following in terms of their character, their qualities. I normally give the example, if we just consider Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, such a profound, exalted personality who never married, never wasted a drop of semen. And he, from a young age, from the age of 9, he knew the whole of Bhagavad Gita. He was editing Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's newsletter works. He was giving talks. He was a real Vishnu. He knew so many languages. His English was so high, even the British could not understand. So, and so many other glorious activities. When he left this world, all the clocks in every single of the 64 mats stopped. I think 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock at that time, froze. Now, if you take such a personality who's like a super brain, so exalted, achieved such amazing Krishna conscious feats, had 64 temples, printing presses, steamships that had dioramas to preach Krishna consciousness. So no doubt he was spiritually and intellectually astute. He knew he could talk about any subject. It was said that he was like a walking encyclopedia. So if such an exalted personality was practicing and propagating Krishna consciousness, then me, who's like, like an insignificant glowworm, whose lights, whose effulgence isn't getting extinguished amidst this glorious sun, I should have a little more intelligence to say I should follow him. Because he's far more intelligent to distinguish reality from illusion than me. So let me follow him. So like that, these great sages, rishis, they all have opted for the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life. And therefore, it should inspire us to also continue on this path. So Prabhupada will go and share. And naturally for us, as followers of Srila Prabhupada, what Prabhupada is sharing is nourishment for us. Whether it's few sentences, whether it's one sentence, that is nourishment for us. If Prabhupada felt we needed more nourishment, he would have given accordingly. Right? He's the perfect physician to give us the proper nutrition. So let us cover. So we're going to be covering quite a few of these, all these personalities from Srila Prabhupada's purports. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narad Muni. They are also spacemen competent to travel in air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also a Devarsi, or a great sage amongst the demigods, like Narada. He was present along Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maj Janame Jaya, the son of Maj Parikshit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were killed. Parvata Muni and Narad Muni are called Gandharvas, also because they can travel in the air, singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observed Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony, selecting of her own husband from the air. Like Narad Muni, Parvat Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly, Kuvera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maj Srinjaya. Maj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. So Prabhupada's giving a little of Parvata Muni's activities, his achievements, his association, his qualities. He's a very close friend of Narad Muni, and they could fly. So if they can fly, they are extraordinary personalities. If these extraordinary personalities are following Krishna consciousness and spiritual life, then I, who can't fly, should at least say, well, they definitely are far more qualified to understand, and therefore let me follow what they're following. So this is how we can take inspiration from these great personalities. And here we see the picture of Narad Muni and Parvata Muni, how they came to visit one of Magrari, the hunter, who was a disciple of Narad Muni. He became transformed. He was half killing animals, and when they came to visit him, he didn't even want to kill the ants. Narad Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of a maidservant, but by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service, and in the next life, he became a perfect man, comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage amongst demigods. He is the son and the disciple of Brahmaji. And from him, the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maj, Dhruva Maj, and many celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Shrijat Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore, Brahmaji, Narad, Vyasa, down to Madhvas, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis all belong to the same line of disciplic succession. Naradji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, the father of Krishna, as well as Maj Yudhishthira. Domya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Utkochaka Tirtha, and was appointed the royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, samskars, and also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the battle of Kurukshetra. In the Anusasana Parva of Mahabharata, 127, 15 to 16, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maj Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest of a householder, for he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householders progressively in the right path of the ashram dharma, or occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages and saints and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. So Domya was a very, very wonderful guide, spiritual mentor, and priest for the Pandavas. Most in Kali Yuga, the family priest is normally just interested in his envelope. He just, he'll do his rituals just to get his pay, and that was it. But previously here we see probably saying there's practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master, which means that the family priests were spiritually aligned to following properly. It wasn't just for getting some money, payment. Vyasadeva, Badarayana, Vyasadeva, he is known as Krishna, Krishna Dwapayana, Devapayana, Satyavati Sutta, Parasarya, Parasara Maja, Badarayana, Vedavyas, etc. He was the son of the Mahamuni Parasar in the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maj Santanu, the father of the great general grandfather Bismuth. He is a powerful incarnation of Narayan, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respect before one chants the Vedic literatures, especially the Puranas. Sukadeva Goswami was his son, and the rishis like Vaisampanaya were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Among sages, he is the most respectful author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all the people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop to take dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by joint endeavor of Vyasa and Ganesh. Just in relation to this, when Vyasadeva asked Ganesh that if can he pen down the Vedas, Ganesh just said, no problem, as long as you continue and I don't stop. As soon as you stop, I will stop. So then Vyasadeva said, okay, but you must write down, you can only write down what you understand. If you don't understand, then you cannot write down. First need to understand what I'm saying, and then you can write down. So Vyasadeva would start narrating. And when Vyasadeva found that he had to think and ponder a little about what he's going to speak, so he's going to need some time, and if he stops, then Ganesh is going to stop. So what he would do, he would say some Vedic statement that would get Ganesh thinking. So he would say some Vedic statement. Ganesh would now be thinking, okay, what did he say? I need to understand. So then Ganesh would would spend some time thinking what Ganesh is thinking. Vyasadeva is getting time to now also contemplate what he wants to say next, and then he would continue like that. So this is how the whole Mahabharata, or practically the Vedas were written down. By the order of his mother, Satyavati, who was later married to Maj Santanu, and by the request of Bhishmadev, the eldest son of Maj Santanu, by his first wife, Ganges, he begot 3 brilliant sons, whose name was Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battlefield of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of the Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maj Janamejaya, the son of Parikshit Maharaj. Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maj Yudhishthir now and then. First of all, he met Maj Yudhishthir at Kamyavan. This sage narrated the history of Maj Nala. There is another Brihadashva, who is the son of Ishvaku dynasty. This is from Mahabharata, Varna Parvat 209, 4-5. Then Bharadvaja. He is one of the 7 great rishis and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashram is still celebrated at Prayagadama. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen, which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaja Muni. Others say that Bharadwaja, the father of Dronacharya, is a different person from Maharishi Bharadwaja. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battlefield, the battle of Kurukshetra. Parashuram. Parshuram or Renu Kasuta is the son of Maharishi Jamadagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus, he is also known as Renuka Sutta. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God, and he kills the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. With the blood of the Kshatriya, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it in charity to Kasyapa Muni. Parshuram instructed Dhanurveda or science of fighting to Dronacharya because he happened to be a Brahmana. He was present during the coronation of Yudhishthir, and he celebrated the function along with other great rishis. Parshuram is so old that he met both Ram and Krishna at different times. He fought with Ram, but he accepted Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parshuram, and by her request only, he asked Bhishma to accept her as his wife. Bhishma refused to obey his order, although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhishma. Parshuram fought with Bhishma when Bhishma neglected his warning. Both of them fought very severely, and at last Parshuram was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. It is said that the only instruction you can disobey from the spiritual master is if he tells you to get married, and you can say no. So Bhishma also, he refused his spiritual master's order in this regard, and his spiritual master said, well, if you say no, you'll have to fight me. And he fought his spiritual master, and his spiritual master was very pleased with his chivalrous fighting and activity. Vashishta Muni, the great celebrated sage amongst the Brahmanas, well known as the Brahmarshi Vashishtadev. He is a prominent figure in both the Ramayana and Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of the personality of Godhead Sri Ram. He was present also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So you'll notice many of these personalities, they were present during Lord Ram's time and Krishna's time. They lived a long time. So they're not ordinary personalities. He was present also on the battlefield Kurukshetra. He could approach all the high and low planets, and his name is also connected in the history of Hiranyakashipu. There was a great tension between him and Vishwamitra, who wanted his Kamadhenu, wish-fulfilling cow. Vashishta Muni refused to spare his Kamadhenu, and for this Vishwamitra killed his 100 sons. As a perfect Brahmana, he tolerated all the taunts of Vishwamitra. Once he tried to commit suicide on account of Vishwamitra's torture, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. He jumped from a hill, but the stone on which he fell became a stack of cotton, and thus he was saved. He jumped into the ocean, and the wave washed him ashore. He jumped into the river, but the river also washed him ashore. Thus, all his suicide attempts were unsuccessful. He's also one of the 7 rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. So Vashishta Muni, no doubt, a very exalted sage, great personality. And here we see, if Krishna does not want him to die, no matter what he does, will not be successful. Again, here we see how those who are fully dependent on Krishna, Krishna's will supersedes. Indra Pramada Rishi. Prabhupada just says another celebrated Rishi. So that's all we know about him, and that's all Prabhupada wants us to know about him, is another celebrated Rishi. Trita Rishi. Trita Rishi, one of the 3 sons of Prajapati Gautama. He was the 3rd son, and his other two brothers were known as Ekat and Dvita. All the brothers were great sages and strict followers of the principles of religion. By dint of severe penances, they were promoted to Brahmaloka, the planet of where Brahmaji lives. Once Tirtha Muni fell into a well. He was an organizing worker of many sacrifices, and as one of the great sages, he also came to show respect to Bhishmaji at his deathbed. He was one of the 7 sages in the Varuna Loka. He hailed from the western country of the world. As such, most probably he belonged to the European countries. At the time, the whole world was under one Vedic culture. Kritsamadhi Rishi, one of the sages of the heavenly kingdom. He was a close friend of Indra, the king of heavens, and was as great as Brihaspati. He used to visit the royal assembly of Mahayudhishthira, and he also visited a place where Bhishmadev breathed his last. Sometimes he explained the glories of Lord Shiva before Mahayudhishthira. He was son of Vita Havya, and he resembled in features the body of Indra. Sometimes the enemies of Indra mistook him to be Indra and arrested him. He was a great scholar of the Rig Veda, and thus he was highly respected by the Brahmana community. He lived a life of celibacy and was powerful in every respect. Asita Devala Rishi. There was a king of the same name, and herein the Ashita mentioned is the Ashita Devala Rishi, a great sage, powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 1,500,000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Mahaj Janmaya Jaya. He was also present during the coronation of Mahaj Yudhishthir along with the other great rishis. He also gave Mahaj Yudhishthir instructions while he was on the Anjana hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan Rishi, one of the sons of Gautama Muni and the father of the great sage Chanda Kaushika. He was one of the members of the parliament of Yudhishthira Maharaj. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son, he can have it. These sons are known as Manasaputra. Out of the 7 Manasaputras of Brahmaji and out of the 7 great Brahmana sages, Atri was one. In his family, the great Prachetas were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife named Anasuya, and he helped Maharaj Parikshit in his great sacrifices. Kaushika, one of the parliament rishi members in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthira. He sometimes met Lord Krishna. There are several other sages of the same name. And then Sudarshan. So Krishna's Sudarshan was also present as a personality because all the paraphernalia of Krishna are personalities, including Sudarshan. This wheel, which is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, as his personal weapon, is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastra and similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agnidev, the fire god, presented this weapon to Lord Shri Krishna, but factually this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agnidev presented this weapon to Krishna in the same way that Rukmini was given by Maj Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Adi Parva of Mahabharata. Lord Shri Krishna used this weapon to kill Shishupal, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Salvya by this weapon. Sometimes he wanted his friend Arjuna to use it to kill his enemies. So imagine, Krishna wanted Arjuna So Arjuna, yes, you can use my Sudarshan, sort this demon out. So this was a wonderful friendship that Krishna had with Arjuna. Now, in this picture of Krishna holding the Sudarshan, you can see in which hand Sudarshan is held. Krishna is holding Sudarshan in his right hand. Sudarshan is always in the right hand of Krishna, because right hand is, in one sense, more righteous. Right? Krishna's hands all are transcendental, but from our perspective, right side is always more auspicious than the left side. Just like we hold our bead bag with our right hand, not our left hand. So Krishna, all his bodily parts are transcendental, but Sudarshan's place is in the right hand. Now, it is described that one time Sudarshan was very proud. He was thinking that I protect my Lord. Because of me, I'm so glorious, I'm so powerful that I am the protector of my Lord. And Krishna wanted to teach Sudarshan a lesson, because Krishna does not like his devotees when the devotees become proud. And Krishna will teach his devotees a lesson to remove the pride for the benefit of the devotees. So when Krishna was in Dwarka, Krishna instructed Sudarshan, who was guarding the gates of Dwarka, to go and ask Hanuman to pay Krishna a visit. He wanted to see Krishna. So Sudarshan flew to Hanuman, who was meditating on Lord Ram, and told him that the Lord wants to see you. And eventually Hanuman did come to Dwarka, but when Hanuman arrived at Dwarka, Sudarshan was already there guarding Dwarka. And Sudarshan blocked the whole of Dwarka so that Hanuman could not enter. He wanted to prove to Hanuman that he is more powerful. So Hanuman is a great devotee of the Lord. So he started to pray to the Lord, and by the blessings of the Lord, he developed the 4 arms, got few more Sudarshans in his hand, and became even more powerful to defeat Sudarshan. And Sudarshan was totally defeated. And then Hanuman comes and sees the Lord, and in this way they have an exchange, and Sudarshan learned his lesson. And then the Lord told Sudarshan, because of your pride in Kali Yuga, I'm punishing you, and in Kali Yuga, instead of a Sudarshan, you're going to become a stamba. You're going to become a log. So this is how we see in Jagannath, Lord Jagannath. He doesn't have a Sudarshan chakra. He's got a Sudarshan stamba, Sudarshan log. Right? And he's not on the right-hand side of Lord Jagannath. He's on the left-hand side of Lord Jagannath to teach Sudarshan a lesson. So now every time Sudarshan is on the left-hand side as a stamba, he realizes, bad mistake I made. I must not become proud. Because because I became proud, now I'm on the left-hand side of the Lord, and I'm not as a Sudarshan chakra, I'm as a Sudarshan stamba. Therefore, I'm very careful. I don't want to be proud anymore. So this way we can always remember, anytime we become proud, think of Sudarshan. The Lord will put us in our place. Okay, so we should be very, very careful. Text 8. Anyecha munayo brahman, brahma rata dayo mala, shishyer upatad ajagmu kashyapang gira saddaya, and many others like Sukadev Goswami and other purified souls, Kashyapa and Angira and others, all accompanied by their respective disciples, arrived there. So Prabhupada shares on Sukadev Goswami and others here. Sukadev Goswami, Brahma Rata, the famous son and disciple of Sri Vyasadeva, who taught who taught him first the Mahabharata and then Srimad Bhagavatam. Sukadeva Goswami recited 1,400,000 verses of the Mahabharata in councils of the Gandharvas, Yakshas, and Rakshasas. And he recited Srimad Bhagavatam for the first time in the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. He thoroughly studied all the Vedic literatures from his great father. Thus, he was completely purified. He was a completely purified soul by dint of his extensive knowledge in the principles of religion. From Mahabharata, Sabha Parva 411, it is understood that he was also present in the royal assembly of Maharaj Yudhishthir and at the fasting of Maharaj Parikshit. As a bona fide disciple of Srila Vyasadeva, he inquired from his father very extensively about religious principles and spiritual values, and his great father was satisfied, and his great father also satisfied him by teaching him the yoga system by which one can attain the spiritual kingdom. The different fruit of work, empiric knowledge, the ways and means of attaining spiritual realizations, the 4 ashrams, namely the student life, household life, retired life, and renounced life, the sublime position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the process of seeing him eye to eye, the bona fide candidate of receiving knowledge, the consideration of the elements, of the 5 elements, the unique position of intelligence, the consciousness of consciousness of material nature and the living entity, symptoms of the self-realized soul, the working principles of the material body, the symptoms of the influential modes of nature, the 3 of perpetual desire and psychic activities. So this was Sukadeva Goswami's school syllabus. This is what he was taught from his father. This is the Gurukul syllabus, all the subjects that he was taught by his father. Sometimes he went to the sun planet with the permission of his father and Naraji. Descriptions of his travel in space are given in Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata 332. At last, he attained the transcendental realm. He is known by different names like Araneya, Arun, Nisuta, Vayasaki, and Vyasat Maja. It's an interesting point regarding, you can see different sages were able to travel to the sun. Prabhupada in one conversation says, because even yogis can travel to the sun, climbing on the sun ray. And Prabhupada in one conversation said he also tested it out. He was also using the rays to go to the sun. So great sages, mystic yogis, they have this potency, they can travel to the sun. And again, the point here is that as we go through these great sages, we can see the extensive wisdom, the exalted qualities they have, the amazing powers and potency they have. And they are all following the Vedic system, the Vedic culture of Krishna consciousness. And if these great souls, if it's good for these great souls, if they are able to understand that this is the right path, then we should have no doubt of the practice we are following. And another point is, we can see these sages, they were there during the time of Hiranyakashipu, Lord Ramachandra, Lord Krishna, 5,000 years ago, which means that even then Krishna consciousness was being practiced. So what we're practicing is not some 21st century religion, 21st century philosophy. No, this is eternal religious principles. Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita in the introduction, Krishna is Sanatan, the spiritual world is Sanatan, the living entity is Sanatan, and therefore the relationship of the Sanatan living entity with the Sanatan Krishna, Sanatan Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is Sanatan Dharma, that is eternal religious principle, that's Krishna consciousness, that's what we're following. Kasyapa Muni, one of the Prajapati, the son of Marichi, and one of the son-in-laws of Prajapati Daksha. He's the father of the gigantic bird Garuda, who was given elephants and tortoises as eatables. He married 13 daughters of Prajapati Daksha, and the names are Aditi, Diti, Danu, Kashta, Arista, Surasha, Ila, Muni, Krodha, Vasha, Tamra, Surabhi, Sarama, and Timi. He begot many children, both demigods and demons, from those wives. From his first wife, Aditi, all the 12 Adityas were born. One of them is Vamana, the incarnation of Godhead. This great sage, Kashyapa, was also present at the time of Arjuna's birth. He received a presentation of the whole world from Parashurama, and later he asked Parshuram to go out of the world. His another name is Arishtanemi. He lives on the northern side of the universe. Agni Rasa. He is the son of Maharishi Angira and is known as Brihaspati, the priest of the demigods. It is said that Dronacharya was his partial incarnation. Sukracharya was the spiritual master of the demons, and Brihaspati challenged him. His son is Kacha, and he delivered the fire weapon first to Bharadwaja Muni. He begot 6 sons like the fire god by his wife Chandramasa, one of the reputed stars. He could travel in space, and therefore he could present himself even in the planets of Brahmaloka and Indraloka. He advised the king of heaven, Indra, about conquering the demons. Once he cursed Indra, who thus had to become a hog on the earth and was unwilling to return to heaven. Such is the power of the attraction of illusory energy. Even a hog does not wish to part with his earthly possessions in exchange for a heavenly kingdom. He was a religious preceptor of the natives of different planets. So Prabhupada is telling us about Indra's curse. Indra got cursed by Angirasa to become a hog. And even after the sentence was completed, Lord Brahma came to Indra and said, okay, your sentence is done as a hog, now you can come back as Indra. And Indra as a hog said, no, I'm happy here. I got my nice hog form, I got my nice hog stew, fresh stew. I got my nice hog wife and my small, cute little hog children. So I got my nice hoggish lifestyle. I'm very happy. Grand, making the son of a hog. And Brahma was astounded and what, like, really? The Indra, you are the king of heavens, and this is what you are thinking? So if Indra, the king of heavens, can be so bewildered by illusory energy to be attached to this material world and not wanting to give up, what to talk about conditioned souls? So the illusory energy is very, very powerful. And Lord Brahma had to kill all his family members one by one to give Indra a reality shock him out of his hog life. And then finally, when he got out of his hog life, then he could understand, wow, material energy is very, very powerful. So be careful. 9. Kan sametan mahabhagan upalabhya vasutamam pujayam asha dharmagno deshakala vibhagvitam. So now all these sages were assembled, and let's see what Bhishmadev does. Bhishmadev, who was the best amongst the 8 Vasus, received and welcomed all the great and powerful rishis who were assembled there, for he knew perfectly all the religious principles according to time and place. So he's lying on the bed of arrows, and yet he welcomed all of them and received all of them. He's got no facilities. It's explained when a guest comes to your house, you need to give them a sitting place. You need to give them some food. You need to welcome them, at least give them some water, welcome them with sweet words. So let's see how Bhishmadev welcomed all these great souls. Prabhupada in the purport says, expert religionists know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas or religious preachers or reformers of the world executed their mission by adjustment of religious principles in terms of time and place. So as I read this purport to completion, in relation to this first point, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, and I'll read it again, and think of it in relation to Srila Prabhupada. So I want you to think and type in the chat, how did Srila Prabhupada adjust religious principles? Prabhupada writes, expert religionists who know perfectly well how to adjust religious principles in terms of time and place. All the great acharyas and religious preachers or reformers of the world, including Srila Prabhupada, executed their mission by adjustment of a religious principle in terms of time and place. There are different climates and situations in different parts of the world. And if one has to discharge his duties to preach the message of the Lord, he must be expert in adjusting things in terms of time and place. Bismuth was one of the 12 great authorities in preaching this cult of devotional service, and therefore he could receive and welcome all the powerful sages assembled there at his deathbed, or from all parts of the universe. He was certainly unable at that time to welcome and receive them physically, because he was neither at his home nor in a normal healthy condition, but he was quite fit by the activities of his sound mind, and therefore he could utter sweet words with hearty expressions, and all of them were well received. One can perform one's duty by physical work, by mind, and by words. And he knew well how to utilize them in the proper place, and therefore there was no difficulty for him to receive them, although physically unfit. So who can think of any of the religious principles that Srila Prabhupada adjusted? According to time, place, and circumstance. So here we have a great personality that's able to adjust religious principles according to time, place, and circumstance. Bhishmadev, even though he could not receive the thousands of sages, kings, great souls physically, but he was able to offer them kind words and heartfelt expressions. Prabhupada allowed women to approach the altar. Very good. He gave Brahman initiation to women. Yes. He changed, yes, Madhachana series got chanting 16 rounds instead of 64 rounds. Very good. He gave us 16 rounds with which we can be in association with the Lord. When Sri Mahaprabhu prescribed was that if that 64 rounds, great adjustment, meeting the needs of these times of industrial revolution, we can now chant everywhere and anytime. Yes. So Prabhupada was a very expert. One time, Satyarup Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, if I have to write a biography of you, what would you want in there? Prabhupada simply told him that I took Tulsi to foreign soil and sowed her there. That means he did not change Tulsi, but because he planted Tulsi in foreign soil, he had to make adjustments for the foreign soil to grow. So that means we have principles and we have details. We cannot change the principle. Shamananda Prabhu says he crossed the ocean, he conducted marriage as a sannyasi. A sannyasi is not meant to conduct marriages. Allowed women to live in temples. They were not meant to live in temples. Use material facilities to preach like aeroplanes and typewriters. Yes. Rasaraj Prabhu says, introduce Harinam Sankirtan in every town and village all over the world. So thank you very much for all that. There is principles and there's details. You cannot change the principle. For example, the principle of chanting the holy name cannot be changed. The details can be changed. And you need to be expert to understand what details can I change, but the principles can never be changed. So we cannot compromise on the principles, but we can be flexible on the details. And one time they asked Srila Prabhupada, how do I know the difference between principle and detail? Prabhupada said it requires a little intelligence. So the great acharyas, they expert at knowing how to become flexible in terms of details according to time, place, and circumstance, but never ever compromising on the principles. And we see Srila Prabhupada never ever compromised on the principles, but was extremely flexible and expert, understanding time, place, and circumstance, understanding the people, the audience that he's cultivating to plant and nurture the seeds of devotion. Text 10. Krishnam chatat prabhavagna asinam jagat ishwaram ridistam pujayan asha maya yopata vigraham. Lord Shri Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, yet he manifests his transcendental form by his eternal potency. This very Lord was sitting before Bismuth, and since Bismuth knew all his glories, he worshipped him duly. Purport. The Lord's omnipotency is displayed by his simultaneous presence in every place. He is present always in his eternal abode, Goloka Vrindavan, and still he is present in everyone's heart, and even within every invisible atom. When he manifests his eternal transcendental form in the material world, he does so by his eternal potency. The external potency of the material energy has nothing to do with the eternal form, with his eternal form. All these truths were known to Sri Bismuth, who worshipped him accordingly. 11. Panduputram upasinam prashraya prema sangatan abhyachasta nubragashrair anudibhutena chakshusha. Son of Maj Pandu were sitting silently nearby, overtaken with the affection of their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishmadev congratulated them with feeling. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, and he was overwhelmed with love and affection. When Maj Pandu died, his sons were all small children, and naturally they were brought up under the affection of the elderly members of the royal family, specifically by Bhishmadev. Later on, when the Pandavas were grown up, they were cheated by cunning Duryodhana and company. And Bhishmadev, although he knew that the Pandavas were innocent and were unnecessarily put into trouble, could not take the side of the Pandavas for political reasons. At the last stage of his life, when Bhishmadev saw his most exalted grandson, headed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, sitting very gently at his side, the great warrior grandfather could not check his loving tears, which were automatically flowing from his eyes. He remembered the great tribulation suffered by his most pious grandsons. Certainly he was the most satisfied man, because Yudhishthir has been enthroned in the place of Duryodhana, and thus he began to congratulate them. So we find very, very wonderful here. Bhishmadev, he is congratulating Yudhishthir Maharaj. He's very satisfied. He always wanted, as the Mahajan, he wanted righteousness to prevail. That is the reason why he said he would stand by the throne of Hastinapur, because he wanted to protect righteousness. But it so happened that due to the factor of time and the influence of time, that Hastinapur became ruled by irreligious king, by irreligious king, and therefore he had to side with irreligion. Naturally, that pained him greatly. So he wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj because he knew that the Pandavas were righteous, they were great devotees of the Lord, and they are the they should be the rightful rulers of this world. So when he saw Yudhishthira Maharaj, it brought so much love, satisfaction, and tears from his eyes, great satisfaction, and he congratulated Yudhishthira Maharaj. He was very, very satisfied. So his desire that they become the rulers was fulfilled. And now, as we proceed to the following verses, we're going to hear how he is going to instruct Yudhishthira Maharaj, and how he also is going to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead and leave this world in the most perfect, exemplary way that we should desire to live, by thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that brings us to the end of these introductory verses, setting the scene of the battlefield of Kurukshetra. We are back at the battlefield where Bhishmadev is on the bed of arrows, surrounded by thousands, hundreds and thousands of great souls that came from all over the universe. They had a very, very powerful social media platform during that time, that everyone could get the news very easily. Don't ask me how, but they knew exactly how to get the right news at the right time and be present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra to witness the passing away of this great, amazing, magnanimous soul, Bhishmadev. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Mother Archana Siddhi says, Ekadasi feast, Prabhupada also accommodated the details of the Ekadasi feast. Yes. So are there any questions or comments? Next week, we will continue with verses 12 to 17. Shamananda Prabhu says, superb purports from Srila Prabhupada sharing info on all these great exalted personalities. How do we reconcile these pastimes? Bhishma and Drona taking the side of Duryodhana due to being contained by him and siding against Krishna and Pandavas. But then Bhishma is also imparting knowledge as a Mahajan. And then we also know that Krishna desires these events to play out in this way. How to understand everything nicely. So yes, it is Krishna's desire. And again, see, we don't know all the parts or the pieces of the puzzle. We see one piece and then we get bewildered with the other puzzles, other pieces of the puzzles, because we don't know many of the pieces. Krishna knows all the pieces of the puzzle. Now, Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan. A Mahajan will never, ever deviate from religious principles. And I'm going to bring, in relation to your question, I'm also going to bring what we read about Garuda. What do we, if you go see Garuda, okay, if you come see me, then you're going to bring prasadam in a form of maybe kachoris, fruits or something, when you, with no chilies. Now, when you go see Garuda, what you're going to take? You're going to go take some elephants and tortoises. Now you could raise the same point, but hold on, isn't Garuda a devotee, and mustn't the devotees follow the 4 principles? No meat eating, illicit, gambling, intoxication. So no meat eating. He's not supposed to be eating meat. Why is Garuda eating meat? And we could, try to speculate and give so many reasons, right? Here's the point, and I'm going to go in reverse. Garuda is a pure devotee of the Lord. Bhishmadev is a pure Mahajan, pure devotee of the Lord. He's one of the greatest Mahajans. The Mahajans, the pure devotees, they follow religious principles without deviation. What are religious principles? Religious principles are the codes enunciated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma tu Shakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. The codes of Dharma are given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, those codes can be given to individuals for the pleasure of Krishna. So Krishna can say, this is the general codes of conduct. No meat eating. Always be on my side. And Krishna can give specific codes or instructions of Dharma to individual devotees according to their relationship and rasa. So Bhishmadev, his rasa, his relationship is in relation to Krishna, his worshipful Lord is Parthasarathi. Krishna on the opposite side as Parthasarathi. So therefore, he couldn't fight Krishna, he couldn't fight with Krishna because his loving relationship is to see Parthasarathi. Krishna with Partha, Krishna with Arjuna. And they have a chivalrous relationship. Right? So Krishna takes pleasure in fighting with Bhishmadev. So this is their relationship. And it was Krishna's arrangement that I want you to be on the opposite side because of our loving relationship. And I also want you to teach through your example. Because remember, the conditioned souls, Krishna does not use to teach. Krishna uses his pure devotees to teach. So therefore, Bhishmadev is on the right side, according to Krishna's direction and instruction, and Krishna's code of conduct or religious principles to teach us. Bhishmadev is on the right side, going through so-called impurities of life, eating grains of the Kauravas to teach us. Be careful of this. Just like Krishna put Arjuna into ignorance to teach us. So Krishna puts Bhishmadev into a situation to teach us. Yet, because they're following Krishna perfectly, they're following Dharma perfectly. Same example can be given. In the Mahabharata war, Krishna told Yudhishthira to lie. So isn't lying against Dharma? Yes. But if Krishna tells you to lie, then that is aligned to Dharma. See, this is the higher level of understanding which Prabhupada gave us in understanding that real religious principle is not what people think and what people stipulate. No, it's what Krishna decides and desires. That is real Dharma. That is real religious principles. And if Krishna tells an individual to adjust, then that adjustment, which may deviate from the original tenets, is still perfect religious principles. So this is how we can reconcile. Same thing with Garuda. Same thing with Garuda. Garuda, he's instructed by the Lord to bless those creatures by having them as food, but he's doing it on behalf of the instructions of the Supreme Lord. It's completely sanctioned and therefore perfectly religious. Hope that answered that question. And Prabhupada will speak about this further in the coming purports as well. Bafana, this was the big event, funeral caused Bhishmadev had not died yet. Yes, I love the idea that he understood etiquette and was able to meet all the gracious sentiments or the grievous sentiments of all the sages, is that they all felt welcome and satisfied. Bhishmadev was indeed a great and intelligent Maharaj. We also can see history of how far back this practice of Krishna consciousness goes. This is very strengthening, assuring, and inspiring to practice more Krishna consciousness. Yes. So Bhishmadev was very expert. And when one does something from the heart, sincerely, individuals are able to detect, individuals are able to pick up that. So Bhishmadev was very expert, genuine, and offered heartfelt prayers, was grateful to everyone that came and offered them comforting words. So they received this very, very wonderfully and accepted this, and they were satisfied. Another aspect which just came to my mind also, which I wanted to share, as we're going through this pastime, just consider Bhishmadev is lying there. His body is pierced. Most people will be worried about themselves. They'll be worried about, ouch, pain, you know, this issue, that issue, my family, this, that, what's going to happen, you know, when I die. When I die, you know, so firstly, it's about me and my pain and my issue and unfair. Or they'll be thinking about, you know, if I die, you know, who's going to maintain my family, because I was maintaining my family. If I'm not there, you know, my family is going to not be maintained. You know, or I was, you know, I was working in my boss, you know, and I was a very good worker. If I'm not there, you know, my boss is going to be in trouble. You know, so they're very self-centered. They're worried about, you know, their situation, their life, what they're not, you know, going to do when they're not, you know, present. Bhishmadev was not self-centered. Bhishmadev, even though he was in such a difficult situation, he was concerned about the Pandavas. He was concerned about the Yudhishthira. He was concerned about the welfare of the planet. He was concerned about the sages that have come. He was concerned about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His interest was not in himself. And this is another lesson we can learn. We can only come to that level when we transcend this skin and bodily disease. And that is why we are practicing Krishna consciousness, to chant the holy name of the Lord, to become so absorbed in our relationship with Krishna that our relationship is revived and we realize, I am not this body. And therefore, in case of Bhishmadev, he knew very well, my body is not pierced because I am not this body. My relationship is with Krishna as Parthasarati. Mother Lesh says, and another point Bhafana Prabhu made is, yes, this Krishna consciousness is eternal science. What you're learning from Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, from Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? You are learning eternal knowledge. What you learned in school, the history of Shaka Zulu, right? Of four trackers. So now, you know, that four tracker, and this is all going to be temporary history that's clogging the mind unnecessarily. It's unnecessary chatter. It's not required because it's temporary. But anything that we are hearing from the Bhagavatam, Krishna consciousness, this is eternal, transcendental wisdom that needs to go into our consciousness. And once it goes there and we let it solidify in our consciousness, it will be there eternally to our credit. And we are going to come to specific pastimes like Gajendra, how his previous Krishna consciousness helped him even in the body of an elephant when he slipped. Same thing with Maharaj Bharat. This is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. This is why by associating with Krishna conscious knowledge is so glorious. It is beneficial now. It gives you a blissful experience. It gives you a proper perspective. It purifies you, and it is eternally with you forever. It'll never ever leave you, and it's never going to change. It's not like the mundane sciences that the scientists discover, and then next year they change this discovery, and then the following year they change discovery, and because their senses are limited. Krishna consciousness is not, or it's not about discovery, and it's not about change. It's about eternal wisdom and eternal knowledge, that it's applicable to every time, every place, every circumstance, to every individual for eternal time. This is the glorious gift that Srila Prabhupada has so kindly bestowed this universe. Mother Lessa, Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for Krishna Katha. I cannot wait for next week. Now that I know a little about who is now present with Bismuth on the battlefield, so many wonderful personalities. Thanks again. Is it fair to say that if you have advanced spiritual understanding on the right level of consciousness, then all these great souls showed up because they have spiritual eyes and ears and received the merciful spiritual transcendental messages that were broadcast, because these souls are so attuned to Krishna, and Krishna's great devotees just show up. Yes. And also Krishna is there, as the previous verse said, Krishna is there, super soul. So with the super soul, when you in tune, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, when you conquer the mind, the super soul is already reached. And because the super soul is everywhere and knows everything, super soul simply inspires you to be at the right place at the right time. So that was the social media connection that they had. Krishna simply inspires them so that they can get the benefit of Bhishmadev, and Bhishmadev can bless them, and Bhishmadev can bless Yudhishthira Maharaj. This is all Krishna's way of showering his compassion, showering his mercy. Just as Bhishmadev was compassionately showering his tears of satisfaction to Yudhishthira Maharaj, like that, the pure devotees also, including Krishna, shower their compassion simply by Krishna's wish. Those who are connected to Krishna, they move by Krishna's will and assemble. So yes, and we also curious to now know what are the religious instructions Bhishmadev is going to tell Yudhishthira Maharaj, because those same instructions are going to be applicable for us. And as we go through, we're going to hear synopsis. The Mahabharata covers great detail, and maybe we'll see if we can share one or two of the instructions from the Mahabharata as well as we proceed through this chapter. Thank you very much for everyone's feedback and questions. We will conclude here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Bhishmadev ki jai, and we will continue next week.